you have to put things into perspective. If this is a deadly force situation and a subject is firing rounds downrange, as a leader, you have to be able to give out commands, and they have to be able to follow those commands instantaneously without any question. They may not understand why, but that's the role that I have chosen as a leader. You're going to take that responsibility, and you're going to hope that people feel comfortable with the leadership and they're going to follow you.
San Diego 911 emergency. You need to come right away. There's a man with a gun and it's loaded. Receiving emergency signal from
4 Charge 1141. We've got a white female down. We need paramedics code 3.
all available units. Roll code that way.
Today, I got to tell you, I'm super excited because our guest today is a guy who, if I could spend every day on this planet just hanging out with him, I would do it because he's a total blast to be around. His energy is so high. His humor is incredible, and he's got the biggest heart in the entire world. His name is Chris Bartolotta. He is a lieutenant with the Connecticut State Police. Chris, welcome to the show.
Harry, it is my honor, my privilege to be here, and I just want to let the folks know I pay him very well to say those very nice things for me.
You did, just not recently. So kind of send that Venmo over to me, okay? Because it's Friday. It's payday.
We'll get it taken care of.
So we're going to spend 15 minutes talking about training, 15 minutes talking about leadership, 15 minutes talking about communication. We're hardcore about all three of these subject areas. And for background, I met Chris when we were doing underage drinking enforcement training. And we have trained in so many different states. We've been at so many different conferences and spent hours with each other, both in the classroom co-teaching as well as afterwards, and hanging out and traveling. And I have been to his home. I have slept in his house. I've met his beautiful wife, his amazing sons. And you know what, Chris? I want to start off, before we even jump into TLC, I want to ask you a question. I'm going to use the word curated, almost like a museum director, except it's not boring and weird. You have designed an amazing life. Your choices have been amazing. The way that you raised your sons, the way that you conduct yourself in your marriage. What's one piece of advice, family life-wise, that you could offer to other cops?
Listen to your significant other. Basically, be patient. That is just a key role in life in general, in what we do in the law enforcement community, what we do in our civilian lives, what we do for teaching. Be patient. We tend to rush things. We tend to want things to happen too quickly. And sometimes, and we talk about tactical TLC, we know that tactics, sometimes rushing in is not the best thing to do. And you will get that with experience and understanding. And that's, basically I've tried to, although my better half is definitely better at it, and she's the one who keeps me grounded. I've learned to be more patient in my life and laugh a lot more. That's something that I definitely need to be doing a heck of a lot more than I do now.
I don't know how you could laugh anymore. Your humor is amazing. You bring it into the classroom so well. In fact, let's jump into the training block. Your techniques in the classroom. I have stood at the front of the classroom with you. I've stood in the back just watching you, and you are a combination of a performance and yet engaging. You're not a lecture only kind of guy. Tell me and tell us how that persona? How did the Chris Bartolotta style of instruction come about? Who inspired you, and how did you get to where you're at today in that?
Well, that's easy. It's couple-fold. And the funny thing is, the person I'm speaking to molded who I am as an instructor after we met and after I watched you teach. But I'll back up first. Ben Stein. For those of you who are not familiar, he's an actor, and one of my favorite movies, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And you see him in the class. Anyone? Bueller. Unfortunately, through the course of my career, I have been through way too many trainings like that, where I was struggling to stay awake and I was struggling to, learn the information that was being given. And when you hear, and now we're going to talk about training, you stop hearing what the subject is saying and you start ticking off how many ums they say. And that kind of defeats what you're trying to accomplish. So when I got into a classroom, when I was fortunate enough to ask to teach a class, I was petrified. Still am in a lot of aspects because I want to be able to give good information out there. So realizing how powerful Ben Stein was in the anti-teaching, I decided not to be like that. So one thing that I'm very proud of, and most people will tell you, is they will not fall asleep in my class. I will be animated. I will try to be as enthusiastic as possible because I am enthusiastic about the information, because I think what and how I teach it, it will benefit you when you leave. I always say I teach from a patrol mentality, not from a book mentality. I will teach you what's in the book, but then how does it apply in the real world? Because we have to tweak stuff, and that's super critical. And then adding in watching you, I would consider a technological guru, just simple stuff. I started using PowerPoint and people made fun of me. What the heck is that stuff? And then learning how to put video clips and animations. And the benefit of this is your sole foundation is the same. So if I'm sick one day and someone has to come in and teach for me, they have a PowerPoint. They're going to tweak it. They're going to get their reading on things. But the benefit is the sole information that you want to be put out there is going to be put out there. But now it's not just, and we all know, death by PowerPoint. So after I met you and learned how to do some more technological stuff, and then we started videotaping stuff and bringing live stuff that we've done, live experiential stuff that we did. Okay, this is what you should do. And then we show it. And then we've had some fun showing people what you shouldn't do. But I think people need to see that so that they can appreciate the pros and cons to what we're trying to get them to realize.
Yeah, and that's good. And I'm so glad that you just brought up a good harmony.
Oh, yes.
In the sense of there's PowerPoint, there's technology, and then there's death by PowerPoint. And in what I really respect about your teaching style is you don't rely on the PowerPoint to do the teaching for you. And give us one or two ideas about how you get students to engage, because I go, and anybody who's listened to this podcast for any length of time has heard me say this before, but it's so critical. I say it a lot. I go by the 85-15 rule. Yeah. The class has 85% of the information already. You, as the instructor, bring in 15%. You fill in the gaps. Now, the challenge is, how do you get the class collectively? Not one person in the class has 85%, but collectively they do. Right. And I don't care what the subject is. And the crazy thing is, academy level instructors, I've seen this happen a lot, get so focused on, well, these are recruits. They don't know anything about law enforcement. Dudes and dudettes, they have life experience that equates. And so the challenge for the instructor is, how do you bring out that 85% out of the group to where the class is engaged, and you're a master at that. So can you give us an idea or two of ways that you get the class to engage and the class to talk? Because we know cops typically, when they're in the classroom, we don't like to talk, at least at first. And we don't like, because we don't want to show our butts. We don't want to say something stupid and be embarrassed in front of our friends. We don't want to give a wrong answer, because in our line of work, if we're wrong, we're dead, right?
Well,
So how do you get cops to talk when they're just not a talkative group usually in the classroom?
Well, first and foremost, I like to walk. Anybody that's gone through any of my training, I'm all over the classroom. And that's kind of part of it, so that the people in the back, you're not going to be a wallflower in my class. If you think you're coming into the back, and a lot of people make fun of it now that I've been doing so many in-service trainings, they say, well, it doesn't make a difference where we sit, because he's going to come and pick on us, and he's going to walk in the back. But I think you're right. One of the big things that I tend to find, okay, if we're going to make a mistake, let's make a mistake in the classroom, because the learning curve is too high out on the road. Now, you can make mistakes on the road, and that's learning experience. And I will tell you this, I have. So one of the first ways that I get buy-in in the beginning of the class, I'll give a little bit about my background. And then I come right out and say, listen, this is not to make me feel better. This is not to impress upon you what I've done. What I'm trying to explain to you is what gives me the right to stand up in front of you and to take your time to now try to teach something. And then in association with that, I will tell you the mistakes I've made through the course of my career. I am exceptionally blessed, because some of the mistakes I've made, nobody got hurt. And that's crucial. If you can't learn from your mistakes, and if you believe that you're perfect, and I tell people in classes, if you hear somebody tell you they got everything figured out and they know what they're doing, I've been doing this for 31 years, and I still learn in the classroom from the class, from the feedback that I get from them. So I think when you share your mistakes, and when you share things that you could have done better, they start to sit there. Okay, well, he told us that he's been declared an expert and he's done all these teaching, but now he's telling us how he kind of screwed up. And I'll laugh about it. I'll make jokes about it. But then all of a sudden, somebody will say, well, what about this? I did this. I said, well, are you okay? Yeah. Well, was your partner okay? Yeah. Okay. Well, then did you learn something from it? Well, yeah, not to do that again. Okay, but learning not to do something again, that's fine. But did you get better at what you, oh, yeah. I was tactically better placed in my interview position. Or I asked this question earlier, and instead of waiting for the answer, I was looking at body language. So yes, you're actually teaching yourself through your experiences. And I think you touched upon it. I'll ask, I did crisis negotiations I'm still doing it now, teaching it, and crisis communications. But one of the first things we used to ask people, how many of you have ever negotiated? Now they immediately refer back to, okay, well, I'm a new police officer. I'm not allowed to be on the team yet. And, maybe one or two gals raise their hand, and I'm going, okay, what the heck is wrong with all of you? Anybody have a significant other? Anybody have a mother and father? Anybody have a boss? Then you've negotiated constantly on a regular basis.
Anybody gone on a date and tried to get a first kiss or get laid? Yeah, you negotiated.
That's a little bit harder negotiations. The benefits in the long run were better, but yes. And when you can get that real world tie-in and then they buy into it, I think that's when we make, as instructors, connections, even to the people who aren't talking or who aren't adding something in there. They're picking this stuff up. And you can see body language. People, and I get it, and I feel so bad. Sometimes they're ordered to come in, right after a midnight shift. To me, I can do any double other than a midnight into a daze. And you're seeing them and they're struggling. And next thing you realize, you're talking about something that interests them. Then they sit up and they're leaning a little bit forward and they're writing notes and they're paying more attention. And that's the energy that I pick up from. And now I start to hit, okay, they're into that. Let me see what else I can draw from this, and then make them feel comfortable with the learning.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really respect about you and the list, it's like the Top Gun saying, the list is long but distinguished. The list of things that I respect about Chris Bartolotta, you are really good about reading a room. When I say reading a room, looking around, judging reactions, figuring out, you're like and normally this has a bad connotation. A BB in a beer can has a bad connotation, but you're a BB in a beer can in a classroom. You're like everywhere. You're omnipresent. You're like God in a classroom. You're everywhere. But you choose where to go. You don't wander aimlessly.
Right.
You travel with intention, and you're constantly reading the classroom. You're really good at picking up on stuff like that, and I always respected. And one of the funniest things you ever said stuck with me. I don't even know if you remember saying it. It was one of the early trainings. You were asking people questions, and you said, and the fastest way to get picked is to look away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, that's funny. And so like everybody's like glued to you. And one other time you said something about you were walking around the classroom, and some guy was like, oh yeah, you were like, don't like a transient, was coming up to him asking for money, and you actually said, what, do you owe me money or something?
Yeah, because then
like,
they start staring at you.
Do you owe me some money? And I was just like, I'm in the corner, I'm just dying laughing. But you're so quick-witted.
You gotta have fun with it.
You do. And as we close up this training block, I want to make one last observation about your teaching style that I think others can really learn from. You are passionate about what you teach. And you said, I teach from a patrol cop perspective. And it's not just what's in the book, but how do we apply it? What does it look like? How do you find that passion in some topics because we all have taught as law enforcement trainers at one point or another, we've taught an unpopular class or a class that's kind of considered boring or they've had many times before. For me, I deliberately chose to teach first aid and CPR class that every time officers come back for advanced officers training, they have every time. And in fact, they look at the schedule and like, oh God, we have first aid again. And I set out with the intention of, I want people to go, oh, cool. Who's the instructor? Carrie? Awesome. Thank goodness. And I actually had people schedule their AOTs. They would ask me, hey, when are you teaching? Because I want to make sure I'm coming during that week that you're teaching, because we rotated instructors. And so how do you, when you go to teach a class that maybe isn't real appealing to people, how do you get your passion that allows you to bring that to the classroom? What do you look for? What do you do?
Well, I subscribe to the Kerry Mansour standard of teaching. I sometimes seek out, just recently I did report writing. And then at the beginning of the class, I have fun with it. I mean, preparing for it and putting together the lesson plan and putting together the PowerPoint, that's challenging. But then when I started the class and I said, okay, I know what every one of you are thinking right now. And they all look at you. And I said, you look down at the schedule and you saw, oh my God, it's for the last class of the day is report writing. What? And I said, we're not going to go, this is the word this is the word and. I automatically started with a story about an officer who was just recently sued. And he was sued for excessive use of force on an incident that happened 6 years ago. And based upon his writing and what he it was a handcuffing. That's what it came down to. How he applied the handcuffs and what the subject said. 6 years later, who the heck is going to remember that? But
Right.
when he started reading his report and picking up, hey, listen, I checked for tightness I fit. I checked for double lock and security. I asked him if that was okay. The subject said it was, I don't want to be wearing them, but yeah, it says fine. And he wrote that in his report. And then as he's testifying to that, and ultimately the jury said, no, that's not an excessive use of force. He called me up and said, you know, you said something stupid to write 2 stupid sentences, and I did. And I got out of being held financially liable because this guy wanted to sue. Do you know how proud and how good that made me feel? That's my motivation. That's what makes me say, okay, I'll take the easy subjects, and then sometimes I'll take the hard subjects, because you have to get motivated because you can help somebody down the road. Just like I hope I say one sentence here that 1 or 2 people say, hey, you know what? That rings true. Then guess what? We did a good thing here today. Plus, I get an opportunity to see you and talk to you, which is challenging being on the 2 different coasts.
It is. It is. And I agree with you there. You know, one of the things that just popped into my head was when you said the easy courses and the hard courses. You know, all the cops love firearms and driving, right? And I've heard those called hard skills. And then you get in the classroom, you're talking about report writing or communication, even tactical communication. Oh, those are soft skills. And there's almost like a connotation of good and bad. And I shifted something on that. And I want to close up this training block with this thought for everybody. Those aren't soft skills. They're power skills. And it's what we do for like 95% of our job. Show power skills and hard skills on the shooting. We can't miss. We got to practice that. We've got to get that right. We got to get our driving right, because we can't make a mistake and hurt ourselves or kill somebody else, right? Or hurt somebody else.
Correct. Yes.
So those we got to be dead on, no pun intended. But the other stuff, that's power stuff. Don't look at them as soft skills. So just a thought for everybody. Okay, we're going to close up the training block. Chris Bartolotta is with us, a lieutenant with Connecticut State Police and a dear friend of mine. Chris, if you called me up and you said, dude, I need you here, I would be on a plane flying directly in whatever airport needed it to be. I'd say Hartford, because that's where I normally fly when I come to see you, but whatever airport. And I just think so highly of you, and you have been such a positive influence in my life. And you know, we talked on the phone the other day, and we were talking about, it was interesting on perspectives. And I think in leadership, perspectives are really important. And you talked about when you came to San Diego, and you were here for a conference that was in San Diego, and a bunch of the people that we worked with at Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation, PIRE, and the underage drinking stuff, were all here in San Diego, and we all got together after the conference, and we had a great time. And I remembered when I came out to New York City, and you and your wife and your 2 sons and I went into New York City from Connecticut. And we spent the day just in the city, and we walked around, and we laughed, and we ate, and we laughed, and we drank, and we laughed, and it was an epic time. It was one of my most memorable vacations ever. And what was funny was when I talked about New York, you're like, epic. San Diego was epic. And I bring that up because they were both epic. But your perspective and my perspective is different for the same events. So as a leader, as a lieutenant and future captain with the Connecticut State Police, where do you see perspectives playing a role from the leader's position?
Well, that's a really, really good question. And immediately what comes to mind is, it's not your perspective. It's the people that you are supporting. That's the perspective that you have to look at. So we just did a section on training, and it's always about trying to get that patrol mentality out. Information, whether it's low level, high level, that they can immediately assimilate and then use. So for leadership, it's got to be the same way. It's no longer a matter of telling somebody to do something. Now, let me back up here. With anything that we talk about, you have to put things into perspective. If this is a deadly force situation and a subject is firing rounds downrange, as a leader, you have to be able to give out commands, and they have to be able to follow those commands instantaneously without any question. They may not understand why, but that's the role that I have chosen as a leader. You're going to take that responsibility, and you're going to hope that people feel comfortable with the leadership and they're going to follow you. Now we take a step back, and I need somebody to park their car a certain way in the parking lot. I need somebody to do some type of enforcement that they may or may not be willing to do. There we have to take a step back, slow it down a little bit, maybe help them understand where we're coming from. Hey, listen, we just got our report back. A lot of serious injury and deadly crashes have occurred in this area. Okay, that's unacceptable. I won't tolerate that in our area. People are getting hurt. People are dying. So mainly 90% of the crashes were caused by speed. So let's go before and after that location, and let's start setting up speed enforcement. We're going to do social media campaigns. We're going to let them know we're going to be doing this. Maybe the first couple times you stop people, we give verbal warnings out. We'll be here again. We have to get people to slow down. And then after a prescribed amount of time, we're going to go out there, and then unfortunately, we have to issue a citation. We have to cost people money because we have to get people to keep their operation safe. And then when you see in the tail end those numbers dropping, you see the officers not investigating as many bad crashes, fatal crashes, doing death notifications, going to the hospital. And then you see the light bulb go on. Wow, yeah, that was kind of a pain in the neck. But ultimately, I'm not doing as much bad work as I needed to be because of all the crashes. So if you could show that benefit and tie it in, I think that's what leadership's about.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I love your analogy of, hey, we got rounds coming down range, we're giving commands. We're in a tactical situation, we're giving commands. Other than that, can we approach it differently? Can we do it differently? And there's the interesting thing is I've had officers when I've talked about leadership, and they're like, well, I'm not a sergeant. I'm not a two-striper. I'm not even an FTO. And really being able to ask questions of them, like, do you think that people in the community look up to you? Oh, some people hate us. Well, yeah. If I wanted to be popular, I'd be a firefighter. Well, I was a firefighter. I know what it feels like to be popular as a firefighter.
Absolutely.
I became a cop. I don't care about being popular. But do you think that people look up to you? And ultimately they do. Okay, that means you're a leader. People respect what you do, oftentimes just because of the uniform, but more often when they get to know you as a person, when they get to see the person behind the badge is a real person, is a real human being. And you're able to exercise leadership without a title. And I think that's important. And senior squad, senior officers on the squad, work in patrol for a good portion of my career. They oftentimes have more influence than the sergeant does on behavior of the squad members. So like you say, being able to give direction, and then that informal leadership, that quiet push, I think is real important too. Let me ask you this, specifically in the area of leadership, what book should everyone read?
Wow, that's a really challenging one. Do you know what? There are several, and I'm not gonna. I can't really go by specifics. Let's say there's a couple like Norman Schwarzkopf, or a former general, put out some great leadership books, and the reason why I like it is because he speaks from both aspects. He speaks from a war front. Okay, so there's the tactical element
Yeah.
where you are leading people into battle. Unfortunately, people are going to get hurt. Unfortunately, people may lose their lives. That is not the leadership. What he spoke about was long prior to that, was developing that rapport, that bond with the people that you work with, the people that you support. And I don't know if it was Schwarzkopf, or if it was Powell, or if it was General Eisenhower, former President Eisenhower, who said, when your people stop bringing you their problems, you have ceased to lead them.
Yeah.
So in the beginning stages, when you're back at the base and you have some issues, you have some concerns, and if you can't bring it to your boss, there's a problem.
Yeah.
So how am I going to lead somebody in really challenging times? I mean, it's really easy when everything is going great and everybody's happy and the money's flowing and the equipment's there. It's when we start coming into times that we're in now, where we have challenging on personnel, we have challenges with equipment. That's when we need to lead. And I agree with you. You told me you did the majority of your time in a patrol capacity. I spent 19 years before I thought I was ready to quote unquote take a promotional exam. And yet people were yelling at me, you've been leading for 19 years. Okay, so you didn't know what you were doing in the beginning. So let's take a couple years off of that. So for the 14 years, you were leading. And that's when it started dawning on me, you know what? Maybe I should take a promotional exam to support them. So I think some of those books from people who have done it, who have managed people both in good times and in bad times, in stressful times and non-stressful times, I think I take the most out of it because I can relate to that as much, and then specifically take what I've learned from that and then apply it to the field when I go out there and try to lead the people I work with.
Yeah. That's so good. For me, mine is emotional survival for law enforcement officers, Kevin Gilmartin.
Kevin Gilmartin, correct? Yes.
That I think having that that background, knowing what's going to be going on with your officers, what you're going through, so you recognize, what's working for you, what's not, and then spotting it in the people that work with
Yes.
you and for you, and that you work for. The 360 approach on that one, because just because someone's your boss doesn't mean that they're not struggling.
Well,
And so,
I've told you in the past, I have removed, and I have suggested to remove people from the road who were struggling, who were having challenges because of day-to-day operations, or unfortunately, some of them experienced some significant trauma. And in an aspect, and I don't use this term lightly, but you have to love the people that you support and you work with. And if you see someone struggling, to allow them to continue to struggle, you're not leading them.
right.
Now, I can tell you, I have taken, with the help of other people, we've taken 4 people off the road. We had given them assistance, and 3 of the 4 people I am still in pretty much regular contact. We talk all the time. They're back on the road. A couple of them have retired, but I will tell you, one, since that point, never spoke to me again. Took it personally. It was a challenging. It didn't upset me in the aspect of, oh my God, I screwed something up. I know I did right. And you know how I know I did right? A couple months later, I saw the wife of that subject.
Mm-hmm.
And we were at a function, and one of my friends said, "Uh-oh, so-and-so's coming up to you." And I thought I was going to get chewed out. I thought I was going to get yelled at, and I was ready. I was steeling myself for it. And she walked right up to me and she hugged me. And
Wow.
it scared the hell out of me because I wasn't expecting that. And she leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Thank you." And then she walked away.
Wow.
And guess what? I knew I did the right thing.
Yeah.
And if he can't understand what we tried to do, what we did, because he came back to the road, he just recently retired. He had a long, good career where he didn't have the time to retire. And those struggles could have forced him off the job, and he wouldn't have been able to retire and get a pension and everything else. So sometimes the decisions we make are challenging.
Yeah. And the I think the true test of one of them, there's more than one, but one of the big tests of love, whether it's agape, amore, whatever level of love we're talking about, the true test of it, in the brotherhood and the sisterhood of law enforcement is, are you willing to risk the relationship for what you know is best for that other person? Because that's what you did 3 out of 4 times. It worked out well. One time that, but each time you and the other people involved risked your relationship with that person in order to be able to help them. And the other thing is, one of my favorite quotes from Les Brown, inspirational speaker, Les Brown, amazing guy. He says, it's really hard to see the picture
Right.
when you're inside the frame.
That is correct. Yes.
And so sometimes we need people. And I think more often than not, like 5149 or greater, we need people to be able to give us that outside objective perspective that's different than ours, because sometimes we don't see the picture. So,
I agree.
yeah. Awesome things. Thank you, Chris, for your insights on leadership. And as we close up the leadership block, next, we're going to be talking about communication, one of my favorite subjects. It's almost ironic, isn't it? Talking about communication. All right, stick around. I'm here with my good friend, great friend, amazing man, Chris Bartolotta. Now, Chris, you are one of the people, I would say, when I think about great communicators, you are absolutely, without question. I'm holding up this hand with this many fingers, and if you're driving, I'm holding up my hand, palm facing the camera, and I got 5 fingers outstretched, almost like I'm going to give Chris a big high five. You are in my top 5 people for great communicators. You do it so well, and I know what I see because I've looked. I'm like, what is it about Chris that everybody loves? And I've in a stalkerish sort of way studied you, just admitting it. But I've watched you interact with your wife. I've watched you interact with your sons. I remember, I got to tell this quick story. We were walking down through Times Square area, and your sons, I don't remember how old they were, but they were like, one was in high school and one was in junior high, if I'm not mistaken. And so they're teenagers, and we were just screwing around, your 2 boys and me, and you were ahead of us, and you would hear them. You had like the daddy ears on, and you would hear them, and they would get really boisterous, and you turn around and you'd say something to them real father-like, and I'm like, because I knew I had spun him up, and they're looking at me like, you got me in trouble. But it was just, I've watched how you communicate with people, and I admire, among many other things I admire about you, it's one of your true traits is your ability to communicate. Can you give us some ideas about what you do? Because I know there's some things that you do deliberately. There's some things that probably just come naturally and intuitively to you. But what are some of the things that you do deliberately that you concentrate on doing in order to communicate better?
Well, you just basically put it into a nutshell. Simply, communication is about listening. And I think people truly forget that. People go to my trainings and people go to my classes and people work with me and they said, oh my God, you can get up there and you can talk about anything. The fact is, if you can't hear what your audience is saying, and you mentioned that earlier in the podcast about you're very good at reading people. Well, that's because I really take the extra time to listen to what they're saying, both physically, the way they may communicate and use their words, or maybe the way that they're looking, body language. And referring back to the earlier statement, the people that we removed from the road, they kept telling everybody they were fine, but they weren't, based upon the words saying I'm fine, but the body language and the net result of what their work product was or how they came to work. So for me, I think to be able to listen and then tweak a training, or to be able to, in a tactical sense, I did crisis negotiations for 20 plus years, listening to what the person is saying underneath, and then being able to come up with a storyline or to come up with a way of helping them save face, of maybe accomplishing something, of looking at all of the basic needs that people have. If I can tweak what they need and then give them that, but not really let them see what's happening, you're very, very successful. And that's basically, I think, one of the key roles that people forget is listening to what the subject is saying and then communicating back so that we're on the same playing field.
Dr. George Thompson created verbal judo. One of my favorite quotes is, people are either talking or they're waiting to talk.
They're waiting to interrupt to get their point across. 100% correct.
How do you listen? Because I teach that listening is a verb. Hearing is a noun.
Correct.
Listening is a verb. It's an active process. So if it's natural in human nature, meaning most of us do it, to wait, we're either talking or waiting to talk. So if we're waiting to talk, we're waiting to interrupt. How do you not do that? How do you listen?
That is the challenge. And I will tell you, as an instructor at the academy, I taught exciting accident investigation and exciting DWI enforcement and interpersonal relations. What the heck is that? Oh, by the way, you got to go see this guy, Dr. Thompson, and you're going to learn verbal judo. And he gets up and he's this huge man and he had this big baritone voice and he's doing all these kung fu moves with his hands. We're going to redirect. And I'm looking at the guy sitting next to me. He's going, I'm not doing that stuff in front of the damn recruits. That's not going to happen. I'm going to be embarrassed as hell. But when you boiled down what he was doing, all we do is we modify. And I, to this day, use it. I just did a training yesterday and I actually said verbal judo. And one of the windows, the guy started laughing hysterically. And he was a little more mature, kind of close to my age, knew exactly what I was talking about. The other people were looking at you like, what?
Wow.
What it comes down to is active listening skills. And I learned that very early on in my career, right around probably 1995. I went through an FBI crisis negotiation course. At the time, it was called hostage negotiation. And you learn about active listening and the 6 techniques that you can use to communicate with someone. But understanding the fact that you got to wait, you have to hold off, and that's what we started this podcast with, patience. And I will tell you, I am not a patient person. In my personal life, I wish I had more patience. In my professional life, I've been very proactive at doing that. So how do you communicate? How do you not wait to interrupt. That's patience, listening. And you and I have been doing training long enough. And when you went through methods of instruction, we talk about the modalities of learning. And you have your visual people, you have your auditory people, and you have your kinesthetic people. So when I started doing crisis negotiations, and you start listening for those words, because I want to have an impact. So when you say something and, are you listening to me? Do you hear what I'm saying? I hear you. I hear you. When you respond back in that same modality, all of a sudden, you expedite the rapport building process. And that's what I think is a key that I can give out, is basically look that stuff up, look about the modalities of learning, look for a active listening type school. And if we have what I say lovingly as civilians on the podcast, Dale Carnegie. I went through a Dale Carnegie training long before I became a police officer, and learning how to communicate with people. And it was basically a sales program, how to interact with people to get them to change their minds about things. And that's all about active listening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. And if the listeners come to tomorrow's police officer starting in April of 2021, they're actually going to find a free course in active listening. So that's going to be something to look forward to coming up pretty darn quick, because we're at the end. Well,
almost
we're coming up on the end of March here pretty quick here. So if you're listening to this podcast after April 2021, tomorrowspoliceofficer.com, you're going to be able to search through the free course area, and you'll find several different courses, but one of them is going to be on active listening, because I think that's one of the, if we could nail down on a person by person basis, the ability to actively listen instead of waiting to talk or waiting to interrupt, that could be world changing.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. I think it should be mandatory. And in some academies throughout the United States, it is mandatory to have a form of active listening. If you do not get that as a police officer, then you need to be seeking that kind of training out. Yes, undercover narcotics and the canine officer, that's all great stuff. But you got to come from a really good, strong foundation. Active listening will get you there, and then you can progress in your career. And for the guys that have been on the job for an exceptionally long period of time, well, maybe it's good to refurbish those skills, work on them, get them a little bit, get the oil out and get a little bit of the dust off, and get that squeak to go away. Because we need to be able to better communicate with our communities and help them to understand, where we're coming from, and then to articulate, we understand in a lot of the situations where they're coming from, and we're going to try our damnedest to work with them to fix some of the issues that we talk about every day in the media.
Yeah. And that's and for years I've pushed trust-based policing, and that's the biggest component of trust-based policing is the communication part. And it's so important that in the conflict resolution model that I teach, which is SALT, S is stop, which is stop talking,
right?
Because it's a pattern interrupt for both you and for them when you just stop talking. The A is assess what the perspectives are. What's your perspective? What's their perspective? The L is listen. That's an active listening. And that listening is such a critical component of conflict resolution, of hostage negotiation, crisis negotiation, going home and negotiating with your teenager to get him to take out the trash.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I have talked someone out of holding a child hostage and threatening to kill that child, and I couldn't get my own kids to take the garbage out. But
fair enough.
We digress.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And the last part of that T on SALT is taking responsibility.
Taking
And
responsibility.
you know, it's awesome. It's, again, one of your great qualities. You're really good about if you make a mistake, you own it. You take responsibility for your actions. And I think that's one of the things that makes you a great communicator, a great leader, a great trainer, and a great cop. But the most important thing is a great human being on this planet. And I want to thank you for being with us on the show today. I want to thank you for the wisdom that you've shared with us, the insight that you give. I'm going to put in the show notes how people can reach out to you because I'll tell you what, if folks, if you're looking for a trainer, you need to reach out to Chris Bartolotta, find out what topics he's covering and engage with him because he's one of the few people on this planet I can say, I can guarantee that you're going to be happy with whatever training he does. So, Chris, again, thanks for being on the show. To our listeners, thanks for giving us your time, whether it's the 15-minute block on communication or the whole 45 minutes of this section with training and leadership and communication combined, whatever section you're listening to or the entire big sandwich, thanks for giving us your time. And I hope we provided value. And if you found value in this, great value, then please, courses for you. I have a free gift for you. If you come over, things that are going to help you be a better person, be able to show up as the best person possible. Because that's what we want for you as law enforcement officers, both out in the field and for the people that you go home to at the end of shift. So until next time, please stay safe. I hope you found a lot of great value in this episode of the De-Escalation Conversations podcast. Please be sure to go to our website, theidea.world, THEIDEA.world. On that website, just click on the link that resonates with you most. If you're a K-12 educator, if you're a firefighter, medical services, law enforcement, flight attendants, whatever industry you're in, we have specialized training for you. So check that training out because literally it can save your life, it can save your relationship, it can save your career. So check out theidea.world. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. This is Kerry Mintz here, and thanks for watching this episode of the De-Escalation Conversations podcast. I hope you got some great insights that you can use right away. But don't stop here. Click that video link above and keep the momentum going with another powerful episode. And hey, if you haven't already, please hit that like button and the subscribe bell so you never miss an episode. New strategies, new stories, and new ways to connect coming your way every week. See you in the next episode.